Montgomery Community Media presents Small Business Network, brought to you by M&T Bank. SBN is also sponsored by Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation and Leadership Montgomery.
Hello and welcome to Montgomery Community Media's Small Business Network, brought to you by M&T Bank. My name is Kelly Leonard. Every month we bring the business community together to network, to collaborate, and to share best practices in an effort to stimulate regional economic development. Thank you for joining us on the live stream as well as here in the television studio. I am so excited about today because I've had the privilege of meeting Seth Goldman many moons ago, and so it's going to be fun kind of taking a little trip down memory road as well as fast forwarding in terms of what's going on now. But for those of you that don't know, Seth is the TeaEO, Emeritus, and co-founder of Honest Tea. And just a little bit of fun facts. Honest Tea is the nation's top selling organic bottled tea, specializing in beverages that are organic and fair trade certified. In March of 2011, Honest Tea was acquired by Coca-Cola Company, becoming the first organic and fair trade brand in the world's largest beverage distribution system. Honest Tea and Honest Kids is sold in more than 130,000 stores in the US and Europe, including Wendy's, Subway, and Chick-fil-A.
And McDonald's.
Oh, wow,
Yeah,
and Mickey D's.
I know.
Seth also serves on the board of Ripple Foods, Yale School of Management, and the American Beverage Association, as well as here at Bethesda Green.
Right.
Oh, and also, he's the executive chair of Beyond Meat, which is a newer venture. So welcome.
Thank you.
Seth.
So nice to be back with you, Kelly.
Yeah, awesome. So it's funny, Seth and I initially when we were getting started, we were taking this stroll down memory lane, and I pulled out my bottle of Honest Tea. So I got this bottle from Seth like almost 5 years ago to the day.
2013.
Yeah, and so I shared it with him, and I was like, oh, you know, this is probably worth something now, right? Because they don't even bottle them like this anymore.
Well, that bottle and that particular variety, so yeah, that's a special bottle.
Awesome. Yeah. So, but for those of you, that are watching, or as well as here in the television studio, tell us more about sort of your background and the Honest Tea story.
Yeah, yep. So I actually grew up outside of Boston, and I moved down to Bethesda in 1995, just after graduating from the Yale School of Management. I started working with the Calvert Group, which used to be based right in downtown Bethesda. And I was doing the marketing and sales for their socially responsible funds. But I always had that entrepreneurial itch, and I was kind of thinking about what would be the right idea that I could go out and launch myself. And actually, you know, my background had been in, I worked on Capitol Hill, and I worked in nonprofits, so it wasn't necessarily going to be a for-profit business. But after a presentation I gave in New York for Calvert to a bunch of institutional investors, which felt a little stuffy, I went for a run in Central Park, and after the run, I went to one of these shops they have, just, you know, where all the food is sold. And I looked at that cooler and I saw tons of options, but nothing that I was thirsty for. And I said, how can it be that there's hundreds of varieties and I'm not thirsty for any of them? And I remembered how when I was in business school at Yale, my professor and I had discussed the idea of a less sweet drink. And I thought, you know, maybe this is the idea. And I don't know anything about the beverage business, or at the time I didn't, but maybe that's what I should be doing. And so I reached out to the professor, who's Barry Nelbuff, and he's the one who signs the bottle with me on the back.
Oh, wow.
And I said, I think I'm ready to do something about this. And I wasn't sure at the time, was it going to be, you know, we had talked about doing sort of a juice and seltzer line, or, you know, something like that. But he had just come back from India, where he'd been studying the tea industry, and he had come up with the name Honest Tea. And it's funny that that's what settled it. But I'm like, well, that's such a great name.
Yeah, it is.
That's what we're going to do. And so I gave, you know, a few months later, we started brewing tea in my house and up in Barry's house, and then kept feeling like there was something to this idea. And so a few months later, I told the CEO of Calvert I was going to leave a great job, an up-and-coming role in a company, to go launch a tea company. And she said, "Wait, really?"
Good luck with that.
Yeah. But that's what I did, and we started out of my house. This was in 1998 now.
Wow.
And so started literally with 5 thermoses, and we got an empty Snapple bottle that we pasted a label on and said, this is, and I managed to get in front of the Whole Foods buyer and said, I want to sell this in your store. And,
Wow.
it was one of those both amazing but terrifying moments. And the buyer said, okay, well, we'll take 15,000 bottles. And
Wow.
I had to, scramble, figure out how to make the tea, how to raise the money to pay for the production, how to get the labels, the formulation, where to buy the caps, the labels, all of it. But we managed to make our first delivery in May of 1998 to what was then Fresh Fields. It became Whole Foods here in the Mid-Atlantic, and we've been selling tea ever since.
Now, so you mentioned you started in your house, and then this huge order comes through. And so I'm picturing like Ethel and Lucy from I Love Lucy with this crazy distribution center. So what did your wife think during this whole
process? She was just so amazing the whole time. She was on board. She really was. And I'm so fortunate that she still is on board.
Right.
But we went through a lot. It was, we literally, she knew I didn't know what I was getting into, but she really knew that I had that itch to try something. And so she was just so supportive. And she was working in Arlington at a homeless shelter, and because I had left my job at Calvert, we relied on her job for our health benefits, and so she was kind of holding the, holding up the weight a lot for us economically at the time, which of course in a homeless shelter isn't that that much, but. She has been so supportive the whole time, and one of the other interesting dynamics that happens is that literally the day Barry and I were in our kitchen brewing tea, my wife Julie walked in. She had just been taking our 4-year-old for his checkup, and he had a really high blood pressure, which of course isn't normal for a 4-year-old. Yeah. It turns out he was going to need major cardiac surgery within a matter of weeks. So talk about an intense moment. I've just left my job. We're getting ready for this big sales meeting, and we found out that our son was going to have this huge operation. And yeah, so it was intense, and I'm so lucky that she was and still is a great partner for me.
Beautiful. That's awesome. So you started in Montgomery County, and then 20 years later, you're still here.
Absolutely. Same house, same
why Montgomery?
Same zip code. Well, the easy answer is this is where we were living, and I started the company out of my house. But the longer answer is it's been such a wonderful place to build a business, to build a family, to be part of a community. And as you mentioned, we created Bethesda Green, which is so one of the funny things that happened, and this is great to share with the local audience, that when I started, we had all types of fancy investors who would come in and give us advice, sort of their insights. And they'd say, well, you've got this natural tea. You don't really want to address like Bethesda on the label. You should set up a P.O. box in Vermont or New Hampshire. I said, number one, that's not honest, right? It's also honest too. And then number two, what's the matter? Why can't Bethesda be a place where green businesses come to life? And we've got, this whole area, the whole county, we've got such an educated workforce. We've got this real connection to an amazing natural environment around us that a lot of people are really connected to. And so when in the back of my mind, when we launched Bethesda Green 10 years ago, and tonight we're celebrating the 10th anniversary of it, I thought, I want this to be a place where green businesses are started, where people who have that insight about sustainability, can feel like this is the place where these businesses should be created.
Awesome. So now you started out small. Yeah. Then all of a sudden the big boys.
Well, not all of a sudden. there were 10 years of really hard work.
What advice would you give to someone, a small aspiring entrepreneur who's just getting started and maybe has this vision, a longer-term dream of going at a national level?
Well, you got to get it right. And what that means is just a lot of iteration, we continually had to improve the taste of the product, the labeling of the product. So here's some funny examples. When we started, it said honest tea, and we said freshly brewed and barely sweetened. We were trying to figure out how do you communicate what exactly is in the product, because we want people to know. But when we said freshly brewed and barely sweetened, people read it as barley sweetened. Like, oh, I've always wondered what does barley sweetened mean? It's like, that we had to fix. So we evolved. Eventually, we ended up on just a tad sweet, which for us was the right way to describe a product it's not as sweet as everything else, but it's not totally unsweetened. Right. Of course, some of the drinks are unsweetened. But so that was one thing we had to work on. And then the formulation of the product, how it tasted. The label, I would say we got right. Well, there were two things we got right from the start. The first was, the name. The general appearance hasn't really changed much. And then I think that mission, the sense that we knew what we were trying to do. We were trying to make a healthier drink. We were trying to make a more sustainable drink, and one that could really be connected to the communities we source from. That all we got right. Everything else we we didn't get right. So it just took a lot of work and so I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to go build this thing overnight, and it takes time, and you really have to keep tweaking it until you've got something that really has traction. And once you have traction, then you take, that extra step, whether it's the financing or hiring people to go there. But I think sometimes people try to go from 0 to 60 overnight, and really it took us about 8 years before we became the best-selling tea in the natural foods industry. And once that happened, we knew we had a launch pad to go more broadly, and that's when we basically took on more financing, and we did, eventually take on the interest from Coca-Cola, which for us really helped scale the business.
Nice. So food and beverage in itself is a pretty crowded space.
That's tough.
And you probably, got bloodied and bruised up a handful of times. You made some mistakes.
Tons of mistakes.
Like, what would you say were some of your bigger mistakes, and then what lessons did you learn?
So it is. It's a very challenging industry because it's not like you have necessarily a competitive advantage, right? You certainly don't have more money than there's bigger companies out there with more money.
Yeah.
They have a lot more R&D. They have a lot more market research they're doing. They have the power of distribution that the small company doesn't have. And so for us, one of the challenges was production. So we initially, as I said, we started at my house. We couldn't, when we got that order from Whole Foods, we couldn't make it out of my house. So I literally went with a friend of mine. We went to just every type of production facility on the East Coast. We went to a soda plant, a beer plant, a jelly where they made jelly. Anybody who was putting liquid in a bottle was fair game. We ended up making our first production run up in Buffalo at an apple juice packing plant. And it was fine, but what happened was, in the first year when we were getting started and there was basically one production run was good for a few months, we were fine. But as our orders started to grow, the apple plant was like, well, it's apple season now, we're making juice. And so well, that's not going to work. So we made them, we knew we needed production, but we made the mistake of ending up actually owning a third of a bottling plant outside of Pittsburgh. And those were the 6 worst years of my life. It was just brutal because I was driving back and forth to Pittsburgh. It wasn't my wheelhouse in terms of either my passion or my talents. It was just a total distraction. I was, instead of building a brand, I was worried about change parts and boilers, all these things that just aren't really building the long-term proposition. Right. So I think you always have to make sure you really understand what business you're in. Okay. It is, I talk to a lot of food entrepreneurs, and so many of them tell me, well, we're getting ready to buy production for our own facility. And I'm like, just don't do that. There's got to be a cheaper way, a better way to do it. It'll take you away from what you're really supposed to be doing if you're focused on building a brand. Okay.
And so then let's shift into, because now you're bigger than beverage. You're sort of have this entree into the food industry. So tell us what that looks like. Like, what caused you to look into that industry, and what are some of the things that you're doing there?
Sure. So Honest Tea, I started that because I was thirsty.
Now you're hungry, right?
So about 6 years ago, I got hungry. Right. And I saw my role evolving. I still spend half my time with Honest Tea, but I knew that because Honest Tea has now graduated to become part of Coca-Cola's portfolio, that there wasn't going to be the same type of full-time job of being the full-time TeaEO that I had been. And so I thought, well, what's another area of challenge or opportunity that I could be involved in? And I'm so fortunate that I was able to work out with the Coca-Cola Company an arrangement whereby I could still be an employee for them, but I could also help find another company that I could help scale. And so it was just so happened it was once again, my wife plays the key role. On her birthday in 2012, she was reading this article about a company getting started out west called Beyond Meat. And it was seeking to replicate the taste and texture of meat using only plants. And we've been vegetarian now for 13 years, but at the time, we were frustrated that there just weren't any good veggie burgers. And the plant-based protein was just a very inferior substitute. So we always knew somebody's got to make this stuff taste better, because you shouldn't have to make a sacrifice when you choose that diet. Right. So she said, boy, if this company succeeded, that would be the best birthday present ever. And I'm a notoriously bad gift shopper, so I thought, well, all right. So I sent an email to info@beyondmeat.com. I said, read this article about what you're doing, really excited, because not just for dietary reasons, but if you can help reduce the impact of the livestock industry on the planet. Right. That's a huge impact. It's also if you can make it healthier too. So they emailed back right away. They were going through, so they were just trying to get started. They had a lot of challenges, and here was somebody who had scaled a food business before. And so I ended up becoming an investor, joining the board, and then in this arrangement we made a few years later with Coca-Cola, where I took on the role of executive chairman.
Wow.
And so Beyond Meat now has grown really in a very exciting way. The big opportunity is that Beyond Meat products are not carried in the freezer where veggie burgers are. They're carried in the meat section of the grocery store. So we're reaching a much wider audience. But also see the product now carried at places like TGI Fridays or Silver here locally.
Oh, wow.
And other restaurants. And so it's been really fun, and we're just seeing interest in this product from really all around the world.
Nice. So what types of, because you saw, or your wife saw this opportunity and seized it, what other trends do you perhaps see in food or beverage? And then what are some of the things that entrepreneurs might be able to take advantage of?
Sure. Well, there's a lot. So first, I think whenever you can connect impact and opportunity, that's the great nexus. That's a great place to be. So with Beyond Meat, right, we're having the impact of on the environment, on people's health, because the product has no cholesterol, it has half the saturated fat. And then the other area where I think there's a tremendous need and opportunity is around health. So when you look at the health trends in the United States, they are shocking. And the one that I look at is the average life expectancy. There's 200 countries in the world. And so every few years, the UN ranks the average life expectancy of all the countries in the world. So you look at it, you say, okay, well, the US is the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We have more knowledge of science and medicine and nutrition than any country in civilization has ever had.
Yeah.
So average life expectancy, and we also spend more per capita on healthcare than any other country. But in the rankings that came out in 2016, you had Japan was ranked number one, longest life expectancy. Switzerland was number 2. The United States was 37th in average life expectancy, which is like shameful, right?
Yeah.
How do we have this type of fortune and we've squandered it? And we're literally not living up to our potential. So I think about, well, if you can bring a product to market that helps people in the world's wealthiest nation lead higher quality, better lives, how could you, I mean, of course you can fail. There's lots of ways to fail, but how could that not be a good opportunity? And so, to me, that's anything that helps people lead better, healthier lives, but it has to be marketed in a way that is accessible, that's fun. I think we always try to find that balance. We don't want to talk about, we never use the word diet here with Honest Tea. We always want to try to talk, we want to make it look and taste delicious. It has to. If it doesn't, all those efforts won't work. And the same with Beyond Meat. We don't even use the word, I mean, it is a vegan product, but we don't talk about vegan and vegetarian on the product. We just say plant-based protein. Okay. And we focus on making it delicious. It has to be great. And so, to me, when you can combine both sort of the need people have to be healthier and find a more sustainable way to grow and deliver a product that delivers it, that's a great place to be.
Awesome. We're going to open up the floor for questions here momentarily. So if you have a question and you're in the studio, get ready to just share that with Seth. But my next question kind of takes a little bit of a shift, because as you were describing the story around Beyond Meat, of course, if I was Beyond Meat and I get this email from Seth Goldman, I'm going to be like, of course I want your help. Yeah. But how have you been able to leverage your influence in the industry to serve on boards? Because I know you do serve on a lot of boards. Yeah, well, so the first thing is you have to find people who, in the case of Beyond Meat, was incredibly fortunate. And by the way, the founder he grew up in Maryland as well. Oh, so, nice. But you have to find people who are welcoming. I mean, and just, sometimes someone sort of come forward with an idea, but they don't necessarily, they think they know everything, or they think they know what they're, only what they're doing, and they want to, and so fortunate that Ethan Brown, the CEO of Beyond Meat, was just totally welcoming. And we've just had such a great partnership because of that. And then, what has happened, a lot of the decisions that and input I've had around Beyond Meat are strategy, packaging, branding, but then there's customers too. There's a lot of customers that Honest Tea has been fortunate to work with. And those same customers make sense, for the Honest Tea customer makes sense for Beyond Meat as well. And then I think part of it is the reputation. We have, I'm very proud of the fact that Honest Tea, now 20 years into its life, has been able to continue to be regarded as a mission-driven company. Yeah. We've really kept that intact, despite I think a lot of people assumed once Coca-Cola made the investment and then the acquisition that we were going to lose what we stood for. We were going to, move away from our mission, and that just hasn't happened. And I think that certainly helps, people pay attention. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think I had emailed you. I had a conversation with some of the folks at Coke Consolidated.
Right.
And I had mentioned, oh, I'm going to be with Seth. And they're like, oh my gosh, he's such a great guy. So your reputation is just stellar
thank you.
in the marketplace.
Thank
So yeah, you've been definitely keeping it honest. So,
That's what we say.
Walking the walk and talking
That's
the
what
talk.
we try.
So first question.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dallas, the owner of True Pop Popcorn,
Oh, nice.
and you are stellar, and you have been my inspiration. We actually started in 1999 and did all those same things in the basement and the garage, so it was really the dinosaur kind of tweaking everything that we knew we had to get right,
Yeah.
perfecting the product. And so we came up with this great product, non-GMO, dairy-free, gluten-free, vegan, tastes like it has cheese on it from the nutritional yeast.
Oh, nice.
And so by the time we did Whole Foods from the beginning, but then we just had to go through that whole manufacturing thing.
Yeah.
And I did that so we weren't scaling the product. We were building the brand, so to speak. So now we're in a position where our top competition has been acquired
Yeah.
by big companies in the billions, and then everybody else that's the food companies like Coca-Cola. They're buying up the healthy companies.
Yeah.
And our product is right there on the shelves in Wegmans, wherever you see these people, but we haven't had the distribution network. So should I keep doing that dinosaur thing? How do I get myself at the table with the Hershey Chocolate Company when we have a product that has proven to be very marketable?
You really need to develop that showcase for success. So when we went to those 17 Whole Food stores, we knew we had to succeed there. Like if we didn't succeed this was back in 1998, if we didn't succeed in those stores, there was not going to be any other opportunity. We needed sort of, even if it's only 17 stores, like we've got to succeed there. We've got to focus on the stores. So that first summer, really all we did was give out samples. We gave out more samples than we sold. But people got it, and by the end of that summer, we became the best-selling tea in those 17 Whole Food stores, and that became our launch pad. So whatever you choose as your showcase, you've got to make sure it works, and don't stray from that until it works. Like just focus on it. So pick a set of stores that you are working with, earn the right to have more shelf space, to get more placement, highlight the fact that it's local, and make sure a lot of these, still today, Whole Foods does really stress, interested in supporting local businesses. So work with them, and the fact that you're a founder is very powerful to be able to be visible in the stores, but don't sort of get in front of yourself. Like make sure that works. You can't sort of worry about the next chain until the first one really succeeds.
All right, thank you.
Good luck.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Noreen Miyake-Char with American Asset Management Group. We're an investment advisory firm in Rockville, Maryland, and I am so thrilled to be here with you this morning. My question is simple, actually a two-part question.
Yeah.
The first one is, so when I'm at home or in the office, I take out a tea bag and I put it in a cup of hot water.
Yeah.
And pretty much by the second cup of water, not much flavor is left in the tea bag.
Right.
So the first part of my question is, when you're brewing the tea, is there a certain amount of, water that you could process it through before it runs out of its ingredients?
Yeah.
And then the second part of the question is, after everything is said and done, you're a big proponent of recycling.
Sure.
So what do you do with all the tea
That's a
leaves
great
that are
question.
left over?
Yeah. So the way tea works, there is an infusion from the first time you pour the hot water in, and that's definitely going to be the best tea. And so what we do is we'll bring our water. First of all, it's important to the extent you can to have the best tea. You'll want to really filter the water the right way. The water quality is good here in Montgomery County, so that's not an issue. But where we go, we have to make sure wherever we're bottling, whether it's in Europe or here in different parts of the country, we want the water to always be great, sort of purity. Then that first infusion is the best tea you're going to get, and so we brew it for about 3 minutes after the water's been boiled, and then we quickly cool it down. So by the time you get to your second cup, it tastes like tea. It's not really good quality, and you're getting more bitterness. And so we basically brew the tea once. We do it in a big vat. I mean, it's hundreds of gallons at a time. And then those tea leaves are spent. We will not reuse those tea leaves. Oh, okay. What we do, we produce, all of our bottling plants are in rural areas, so we actually donate the spent tea leaves to farmers. It's great organic compost. You know, and the first time we tried to, because we have a plant in Virginia, we tried feeding it to local cows, and they didn't like it. They got a little jumpy. I think it was the caffeine. But it's great compost or mulch. So that's what we do with it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Connie Inukai, and I'm also an inventor.
Oh, great.
So I'm very inspired by you. I actually I used to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So like I'm old now, so I started a new career. So my question, I have two questions for you. One question is, did you just walk into Whole Foods?
So I got an appointment. It turns out that my co-founder, Barry, one of his former students was head of marketing there. So it was and it was somebody I had gotten to know through the Yale School of Management alumni group here. So he helped set up the appointment.
Okay, great. Now, my second question, as you know, I love the name of your product. I don't really like the name of my product.
Yeah, you gotta like the name of your product.
I actually love the name, but it's a little bit misleading.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's too late to change it.
It's never too late. You gotta get it right. When you're a small business, you have, as I said, fewer resources, and so people have to understand really quickly what it is. And so what's nice about this, when we didn't do focus groups, but we did ask people what do they think, and they said, well, I get it, that's gonna be a natural tea. It looks like it's gonna be even less sweet.
I'm gonna change the name. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
We've got about 2 more minutes, so quickly, gentlemen, let's get these questions in.
Hi, I'm Ray Smith.
Hi, Ray.
Okay, I'm with Harbor Touch. We're a POS equipment provider and payments processing company. So I have one question. I'm vegan. I'm also soy free.
Good for you.
And I would spend on average 30 minutes trying to find some place to eat.
Yeah.
Until Beyond Meat came along.
Oh, have you tried it? Oh, great. Thank you. That's
and I'm also an Honest Tea fan as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So I want to know, what was your toughest challenge getting started in the business? And was like the compete for shelf space and all of that a factor in your mind when you were bringing this to the market?
For Honest Tea, the toughest challenge was distribution. Because we knew consumers would like something like this, but we were dependent. In the beverages, you can't just ship it through the internet. You can't just ship it through the mail. It's got to get to the shelf. And so beverage distributors, the folks who distributed Snapple in Arizona, weren't interested in this. And so we had to go around them. And so we went to corned beef distributors and cheese distributors and every other type of distributor to get to the shelf. And eventually the beverage distributors gave us that shot. And that's why it's been a little surreal. As we've launched in Europe now with Coca-Cola, I just go in, and I say, I get to meet with the customer. I don't have to worry about that distribution anymore. And that's incredibly freeing and exciting.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Last question, and if we can ask it quickly.
All right, very quickly. Hi, Mark Brown from 3 Brown Boys Granola, made right here in Gaithersburg.
Nice.
I have 2 questions. You said that you went from your home to huge production. How did you maintain the quality of your product going from small to large production?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. In fact, now that we're at Coca-Cola, which is even larger, the production's gotten better. So there's, scale is not an enemy of quality, or it doesn't have to be. We just had to make sure the key was getting the right ingredients, so we kept the same tea leaves, and we're still working with some of the original tea gardens we started with 20 years ago. And then it's just having tight quality control, making sure you're tasting everything, doing sampling of making sure all the right indicators, so whether it's the pH or the Brix, which is a measure of sweetness, they're all the same. So scale is not an enemy of quality. It doesn't have to be, at least.
And with that, I'm going to need because we are at the end of our program, you will have the opportunity to ask that question. This is the benefit of being live in the television studio, because you have the opportunity to hear these questions as we continue on off camera. As we wrap up today's conversation, I want to thank you, Seth, for being here. Be sure to join us next month, November 15th, as we celebrate National Entrepreneurship Month. And we'll have a conversation around diversity of the local supply chain. So we look forward to seeing you on the live stream, as well as being here in the television studio. Thank you again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.